All right, hello, and thank you for joining us for Salisbury Pride's first panel discussion. Many of you may not know the history of Salisbury Pride, so we decided to start at the beginning and introduce you to some of the people who turned an idea of equality for all into a movement in Salisbury. They organized our first Salisbury Pride Festival in 2011, and we hope that tonight you'll join our discussion by asking questions in the comment section, and then we'll do our best to get them on there with the panelists. We are having a couple of little technical difficulties, this being our first one, so please be with us and stick around, and we hope you'll enjoy everything that we talk about. So let's get started with some introductions. How about Tamara Sheffield? Why don't you tell us who you are and just get us going.
Good evening. My name is Tamara Sheffield. Fortunate to be with some awesome people a decade ago when we got to start Salisbury Pride, and been very lucky to be with this group and new people that became part of the group. I'm currently a Salisbury City member and am still a Salisbury Pride member.
Thanks, Tamara. How about Brandon? Why don't you introduce yourself next?
And good evening, everyone. I'm Brandon G. Major, and the G stands for I am so glad to be a part of this tonight. So we had a vision nearly 10 years ago, and so it started off with a small group, and then it evolved over time, and here we are almost 10 years later, and we're now talking about it and going to memorialize on what's happened, which is great. I'm not living in North Carolina right now, but that's my family. I'm in Greenville, South Carolina right at the moment, but who knows, that could change at any day now as we get close to that 10th anniversary. So I'm looking forward to what that looks like and brings to Salisbury.
All right, MJ.
I am MJ, Maryja Mee. I am an original board member, and I'm still on the board. I work with the volunteers mostly, along with just working hard all year long. I work for Food Lion, who was one of our original sponsors. I'm very proud of that. And just glad to be here with everybody tonight.
Thanks, MJ. And Mike Clawson.
Hi, I'm Mike Clawson. I'm the founding member of Salisbury Rowan P Flag, and 10 years later, and I'm just glad to be with you guys to talk about our first Pride event.
All right. So now that we know everybody, let's just kind of dive in here. Mike, can you tell us a little bit about what sparked the idea to have a Pride Festival in Salisbury?
Well, sure. As P Flag was founded in January of 2006, we had a great executive committee, and two of our most important projects were going to be a scholarship fund and a Pride event. At that time, I was sitting on the Salisbury Human Relations Council, who also sponsor other events for marginalized communities, including La Fiesta de Rowan and the MLK celebration. So I came up with the idea of having the Human Relations Council sponsor and fund a Pride event in Salisbury. And that seemed to work out pretty good. The Human Relations Council passed it unanimously. And so it was a go. It was going to be a city-sponsored event. And later, I think the county, once the word got back to the city and county executives, they sort of balked at the idea and asked Salisbury Rowan P Flag to take ownership of the event. And so that's kind of what we did. And then organizing began, and that was the start of this history. Yeah.
Wow. So it originally started as an idea for a city event, but then you guys changed it over to having it go with Peace Flag. That's really interesting. So anybody else, did y'all think about a pride before you heard that Peace Flag was starting to organize a pride?
No, I didn't think about it until a friend of ours who was also on the HRC with Mike came over and said that the council was talking about having a pride event and asked if Tamara and I would want to be a part of that. So all from the beginning, we thought the HRC council and city were on board, and we moved forward.
And I think one of the things that when I think about where Mike and I were in that time frame and having a lot of conversations with them, there were so many other diverse events that were taking place in Salisbury. So they were on board that, our population should be recognized as well. But I think they didn't think there was going to be a big need or a big population within the city. So I think they soon began to gather, based on the information and the data that we were supplying, that it was a bigger population than they thought in Salisbury. So then at that point it began more of the dialogue. So I'm not sure if we want to sponsor this yet. I'm not sure if this is something we're ready to move forward with. And that's how we really got to the P Flag. And like MJ, I was actually at Food Lion, which at the time we were very into our diversity and inclusion. So it was the leadership that there was also very supportive in our quest to make this come to life.
So that kind of leads me into my next question. Like, how did you all come together? And I know that you're not the only ones, there are more of you, but how did y'all actually find each other and come together? Tamara, you want to start that one?
Yeah, so kind of back to what MJ was saying, at the time serving on the Human Relations Council, which was at the time Rowan County, Salisbury. Our neighbors at the time were serving on that council with Mike Clawson. And so I think that's how we got involved. It shifted from being a county city event to, as Mike said, asked people to get over for multiple reasons that Mike think about. So it shifted to that, where I guess a long story short, it fractured that partnership, and now Salisbury has a council, and we don't seem to have problems now with it. But it's also not under the umbrella of the city. It's still, it's still Salisbury Pride. But we got involved with that through the connection of Seth Leibovitz and Willie Lopez. And then I think, Mike, you had a meeting at your all's church. I believe they had opened up space for Anderson, and you guys, a couple of Edens comes to mind. Let's see, Tony Hooker, Beth Meadows. The first meeting, I think that MJ and I couldn't attend the first meeting, I don't think. And I think we asked Beth what she thought about it, because we were friends, and she went to the meeting. And so that's kind of how things started. You all correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how the network started weaving. And then we started realizing that we needed on the board, like people of a certain age, different demographics, trying to make sure we have sitting at the table for Salisbury Pride. And I'd like to say I'm happy that over this decade, Salisbury Pride's done a great job on getting a diverse group of folks serving on the board, as well as our committees. So I think it started then.
Great. Go ahead,
No, I'm saying
Brandon.
that's excellent. And it was also through the word of mouth, back to where we're trying to do the grassroots. And Tamara, you brought up a great point that we were looking to make sure that we were going to be representing everyone within the community. And then that's how everybody became so diverse into the board.
Well, anybody else have anything else you want to add to that? All right. So, what made you all specifically want to get involved? Brandon, you want to start that one? When you heard about it, what made you say, yes, that's something I want to be involved in?
So it's interesting that, and I'm glad you asked me that question. So 10 years ago, when this is starting, and when I actually moved up to the Carolinas from Florida, on the Gulf Coast, and I was working at the time for Food Line, but they had purchased a company in Florida. And so I came to Salisbury as a Black gay male, that at a time when they said Salisbury might not be ready for me, to the point where they said, you might want to live in Charlotte. It may be a little small. And so it was almost like I had been this out person. And yet when I came to Salisbury, it was like they wanted me to go in the closet, if you will. And so I said, no, I'm already out. Do I need to have a press conference to let everybody know that? Because that's who I am. I want to bring my whole self to work. And I recognized there were quite a few people that was in the business acumen that was not out. And they were not bringing their whole self to work. So when that work began at Food Line with their diversity and inclusion, it led me to a bigger calling that we needed to go beyond just the workforce, but people needed to be able to bring their whole selves wherever they were, whether it was in the workplace, and social gatherings. And so, having been involved and attended other prides, I thought it was time for Salisbury to take that next step. So to allow everyone to be there. And then I recognized just through the friendships that there was a lot more people than they thought lived in Salisbury that were waiting for this.
Yeah. Yeah. So we just had somebody comment and say that they're glad that you were ready for Salisbury, even if Salisbury wasn't ready for you. So,
Very true.
yeah. So I think we're all happy about that too. Yes. So what about you, MJ? What made you want to get involved?
I was kind of reluctant at first. I'd never been part of a group like this to organize such an event. Maybe reluctant isn't the right word. Maybe a little apprehensive. I had a few fears. It seemed so large, but it seemed important, and I knew it was needed, and it was time for Salisbury to come on board. So I just jumped in and did what I could, and I mean, we were all just scrambling around trying to figure out how to get it off the ground. But I'm glad I joined.
So are we. All right. Mike, you want to tell us what specifically made you want to do this?
I can't hear what you're saying. I really can't.
What made you want to get involved in the Salisbury Pride? I mean, what made you want to do it?
Well, like I said in the introduction, as leader of the P-Flag chapter, one of the biggest things I wanted to do was have a pride event. From the get-go. It took us a few years to make it happen, but seeing all the pride events in the bigger cities around us just made me want to do it here.
Yeah, well, that's good. What about you, Tamara?
Similar to Brandon and MJ, they were working at Food Line. I was working and still am working at Frito-Lay. and we had already partnered as companies at other Pride events. So my employer afforded me the opportunity to be able to be involved in my community, specifically, you know, the most fabulous part of the community, the LGBTQIA group. And so when the chance came around to do it at home, you know, I was all in because I knew I could bring my company, just like Brandon and MJ knew they could bring their company. Mike knew he could bring Novant. I mean, we already had these connections from our professional lives. We were experiencing employee resource groups at work. And for me, it just felt like the next step is I'm getting this at work, but I am friends with people who aren't, and we don't feel like it when we're out in our community. So it's time that we bring that to our community. So that was my, once I found out, once I was asked, I was in.
Mike, did you want to add something?
What was that?
Did you want to add something? You feel like you want to add something to what Tamara was saying?
No.
Okay. All right. So, MJ, how about you take this one? When did you guys originally start planning the festival that eventually took place in June of 2011?
I think we started in the fall of 2009. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know we thought we were going to have the festival in 2010, and when things kind of fell apart and we realized the city wasn't behind us and we had more work to do, we pushed it out to 2011 just to give us time to get the sponsors and get the support, get the community support, and just get the festival to where we wanted it to be without launching it unsuccessfully.
Yeah,
Is
that
that
makes
coming
sense.
right?
Yeah.
Fall 2009, somewhere in there.
Yeah, that was it. It was a whole year planning because, again, we really did think we were going to kick it off in 2010. But you know what? It was probably everything I always believe happens for a reason at the right time. And the timing was everything because back to what Tamara was saying, how it evolved from being a potentially city-sponsored event to actually becoming on its own. And then with that, we were able to have the freedom to do the things that we needed to do because I think we would have been under some strict guidelines and it might not have been the big event that we'll talk about how the first year was. So I believe that everything does happen for a reason at the right time.
Gotcha. So we've got a question from the audience here. They want to know, how bad was the LGBTQ plus environment in Salisbury at that time? Was it bad? Was it good? Was it indifferent?
Personally, I think in the city, I don't think the environment was so bad. I don't think we had that same comfort level out in the county. But what you didn't know was that you were okay to be out in the city because we had no litmus test to prove that restaurants accepted you. People wanted you shopping in their stores. We had no way of knowing that until we started creating Salisbury Pride. And businesses were ready, restaurants were ready. People wanted you to know, especially in downtown Salisbury, that we were welcome as a community, but we had no platform to let those people let us know. So I don't think it was a terrible environment. I just don't think we knew. And this made us all come out of the closet, either as a community member or an ally. And that's very important because then you know where you stand.
Yeah, exactly. So that first year, Brandon, why don't you take this one first? What was the biggest challenge? Well, I mean, really, you guys started planning in 2009 and then it was 2011. So during that time, before that morning of, what was the biggest challenge you feel like you guys faced?
I think when we think about one of the things that comes to mind was back to how do we know how many people were going to show up? So, so that was a fear that we're going to put all of this effort in and only about 200, 300 people are going to show up. But we were going to be okay with that if that were the case, because it was the start. And then it was, what type of opposition were we going to be faced with? Because having gone to all the other Pride events, there's always that going on. And we didn't want that to be more than the actual participants. So that was the biggest fear, saying, you know what, let's make sure we have more people having a good time and less of those that might be in the protesting mode. And so I think even up to the night before, and as we were setting up, and we still weren't quite sure just how many people were going to show up.
Does anybody else think that was a big challenge? Anything else stick
For
out?
me, it was for me, it was getting sponsors. I was worried about having enough money. And if you look at our shirt from our first year, we didn't have that many sponsors. And to be honest, we all put our money in. We all sponsored the event.
Yeah.
We are all listed on the shirt. So we were fully invested in this. And so just getting that money raised in order to pull off a successful event. I mean, all our entertainers worked for free. I mean, we didn't have a dime to pay them. We had to pay for a stage and everything, and just all the logistics like that. That was, to me, was my biggest challenge that I thought we faced.
Yeah. Mike, are there any other challenges you thought were particularly hard to overcome?
Yeah, like Brandon mentioned, I think the whole committee was a little worried about what the turnout was going to be and if this event was going to be for naught in the end. But I think we all talked going in that we hoped we had at least a few hundred show up. So like any event you put on, you know, you're always worried about the turnout. And needless to say, we were pleasantly surprised at the turnout for that first Pride event. It was awesome.
It was definitely incredible. I do have to say, I remember the conversations about, we hope 200 or 300 people will show up. And I remember talking to my now wife about it right before, and thinking, people are going to show up, but you know, there probably won't be a whole lot of people. That's what we really thought. And so it's interesting to me to hear that you all were thinking, you know, really worried about that you're talking about that now as one of the biggest obstacles, was just kind of how many people were going to show up. But Tamara, do you agree with that, or you think there's anything else that was very challenging?
I mean, I think we all smile and giggle a little bit when we look back, but I mean, I remember that saying, okay, if we can get just 20 booths to set up, just 20, and we got one little street, just one block, you know, that one block on Fisher of a street, nothing else. So if we get several tents set up and 250 people show up, then we'll look full. And the stage at the end, so we had it staggered to where we're going to look full whether we were or not. Because we've all been to some other smaller ones who are doing their jobs and they didn't have a lot of attendance. So that's what we expected. I think the night before we found out that a permit was given to an organization to officially protest us. So we were told about that. So we knew where they were going to be. So of course they got there before the event started. So when we look across the street and we see 200 people there in opposition, and we're like, well, there's the 10 of us. You know? but before you know it, we had, I think the first crowd guesstimate was right around 2,000 people. And that's what we knew. That it was gonna work as long as people were putting the work into it, and that we needed it. Our community needed it from many counties all around. Our community needed it. So yeah, I remember the opposition of the numbers that morning, and it's craziest thing. You know, we'd seen other things go on around the country, and we didn't know how it was going to go down. We knew it had been a little bit of a rocky start, and I remember going over to one of our little, utility tubs that had tons of markers in it, because we were going to help people across the street. We were navigating on the fly of ensuring our attendees' safety. While the permitted protesters actually, I would stand behind them all day long with their right to defend their opinion. But they were, for the most part, courteous. That particular group was. It had been permitted and did the right thing. But other people started trickling in that weren't part of that group, and I think we got anxious. And I remember going over to this magic marker tub, and I got this magic marker out, and on my forearm, I wrote "Be brave." I needed a reminder of why we were there, and that none of us could bail. We had to be the bravest people there because we didn't know what to expect for those next few hours as it started building that morning. But it was just a beautiful event. To all of our surprise, the numbers were something we would have never imagined. So.
Yeah, I have to say, from my personal experience, I had a booth that first year. And that morning when I came in and was, I had parked, I was running a little late. You guys know me. That's not anything crazy out there. So I was running a little late and I was trying to hurry, but I had to park a little ways away and had to make multiple trips back and forth from my booth to the car. And in the process of doing that, I had to go through the protesters every time. And each time that I was going through them and crossing the street, I was just thinking, oh, please let some people show up, because right now it's all haters. And this might get a little scary. You know, I mean, there's a lot of hate out there, but I was still excited about it. And so we, got everything set up. My best friend was helping me in my booth that day. And after the conversations about, how many people might show up, I told her, I asked her if she would come help me, and she said, sure. And she said, if you're thinking there might not be a whole lot of people, she was in grad school at the time. She said, I might bring my stuff and do a little homework and stuff if it's not busy. And I said, sure, go ahead. Yeah. So she gets there, we get everything set up. And as soon as we were set up, there were people, and it did not stop. It was absolutely nonstop. And I think it was a few hours later, we looked at each other and said, this is insane. This is awesome. And this is happening in Salisbury. So, you guys just did an incredible job putting it together. I'm still in awe of what you did that first year. But so I guess we've kind of already answered a little bit. But what were you guys, literally when you woke up that morning, what were you thinking? Were you thinking anything kind of crazy? Tamara, let's just start with you again. You ended that last one. We'll start with you.
I think we got anxious the day before, because I want to say that we all met that evening. We put up parking signs. We kind of gathered, and we had learned of a permit for a protest. And again, I'd like to add those folks who did get that permit, they were the peaceful folks that day. They were there to show their concern and whatever message they had, and I felt like they did it appropriately. But we didn't know that, and so I think that kind of bared on a lot of us as we got there that morning, because like we said, they were there early before any of the attendees showed up. But I think though that things just started happening. I mean, we had planned this. If we ran the play, it was going to work. We had rehearsed basically, and we all knew our jobs. We all know who was doing what, where, and how we were going to execute it logistically. It was laid out. So that part, that was the enjoyable part, right? It was the variable that we didn't know as we started going into that evening. But I think I think we all might have went out that night and commiserated and maybe celebrated a little bit. So it wasn't a horrible night at all. We were all tired going into that morning, and we were exhausted after. But it was, I think that anxiety, we held each other to make sure we were all good.
Yeah, Mike, were you anxious about anything that morning when you woke up? Anything in particular?
Yeah, extremely nervous. didn't know how it was going to go down. But as the morning progressed, I think I had a lot of MC duties on stage that first year, and so I wasn't very aware of what was going on around the venue, and but it was awesome.
It sure was. MJ, what about you? And I'm gonna actually throw you another question from the audience. Also, they want to know if there were any particular allies that were important in helping the festival happen that first year. Any allies in particular?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, there were a lot. There were a lot that we learned of that year, just going out and meeting the community. Like Tamara said earlier, we didn't know what kind of support we had. We didn't know until we were walking in a store, handing a sign saying, "Would you put this up in your window?" I expected to get a lot of no's, but so many of the owners were like, "Yeah, we're excited. We heard about it." And so those people helped. We had entertainers. One that comes to mind is Nadira Dance. She was one of our big performers and made a big production, and just so many. I couldn't even name them all, really. We just had a lot of allies that really lifted us up and said, "Yeah, y'all can do this," and encouraged us. Store owners gave us raffle items and encouraged us. Critters, Pottery Reserve, Bracious Trading at the time, Sidewalk Deli. I mean, I can't even name them all. There were so many allies out there that really encouraged us.
Yeah, that's definitely encouraging. Brandon, what about you? What did you think that morning?
So one of the rituals was, and Mona, I hope she's watching tonight. Mona Burkowski, she lives in Destin, Florida now, but she was our for those of us that were out of town that I solicited, enlisted to work. Mona was the hotel. She was the house. So the first thing we always had to have breakfast. We had one that Jackie Boatwright, I hope she's on that, would do the breakfast along with Mona, and we're making sure our shirts pressed, and it was all this excitement, and I was trying to keep everybody's tension level down, the glass half full, because like Tamara was saying, we had the playbook, we knew what everybody was going to do, but what we didn't know was the unknown until we got there, and that was how many people that were in the opposition. So it's like, okay, so what if there are? So we even had that played out in our mind. So what if there's more of them than us? So we still got to be brave. We still got to play this out, because at the end of the day, we are making history. And I think that was one of the things that resonated with me is, how will this headline read? Because we had done all the interviews, the press releases, we've had the coverage, we were everywhere talking about it. But it was like, so what was going to be the headline when we read the paper the next day? What was going to be on the news that evening to tell the story that we had envisioned to go one way, and were they going to be able to actually articulate it the way we wanted the story to be told? Or was it going to be twisted? So I think those were the things that were going through my mind that morning, because having that type of background, journalism background and development, I was thinking, how is this all going to play out? And what would it look like? Because to me, that would be the foundation that we would build off of. And it was, because it did play out right. The 2,000 people did show up. The protesters were, for the most part, right, the peaceful ones. And so we had, and Tamara, I have to go back to you for a second, because the logistics and looking at how many booths we could get set up on there, and MJ looking at how much money we had invested, and that was not even really on our mind per se, more than the booths there. We want people to come to support the vendors that had invested in us. which have become those allies that we're talking about, MJ, that we didn't know, but yeah, they got a booth, and we were able to put one more in there. You were a vendor, even so. So I think it was like making sure that all of that was going to come to life to the way we had envisioned it in our playbook, and it did.
So, what about that first year's theme? Our city, one goal, equality for all. MJ, it looks like you have the shirt on.
I do.
Where did that come from?
Mike,
Mike.
Yeah. Came through Mike.
Mike, you want to start on that?
Well, I did design that T-shirt that year, and what we're looking at there is the bell tower around the Salisbury Pride logo.
Yeah.
Brandon can expand a little bit more on the logo or the tagline itself.
So, and he's right. So Salisbury was significant that we wanted to have something to symbolize the actual city itself. And it is our city. So it was looking at how each and every one was a part of and could be represented there. So that was our city, and that was our goal, to make sure that everyone felt welcome, that everyone was included, because that's really what Pride was all about. There was this segment, if you remember, I was talking earlier, when it was part of the city and they were having all of the different other events, and we felt like this was our population being left out. So this was a way of telling the story of, you know what, it is still our city, and our goal is to make sure that everyone feels welcome.
So it just kind of came from that. It makes total sense. It was a great tagline, and started the equality for all that we, still try to keep in there every year.
We like that part so much that we just have incorporated. That's always been part of the thing, equality for all.
Yeah. So, what that first year, what gave you the most joy? That day at the festival, or leading up to it, or right after. I mean, what gave you the most joy? Were you going to start asking, Brandon?
MJ?
No, go ahead, Brandon.
So at the time, my partner who passed away, Scotty Ray Gilbert, he had never really been involved in any type of Pride events, or he's attended some, but he wasn't really fully out with his family to the degree until we got together. And then the biggest joy for me was when people came up to him or came up to me and said, "Thank you. I never would have imagined this ever happening here. I dreamt of it happening, but never would have imagined that in Salisbury we would have it." But you know what? Thanks to each and every one of you and the belief that you had, you brought it to life. And it was when he was hearing the people coming up to me and talking to me. And then when I saw the tears in his eyes and I said, "What are you crying for?" He said, "I didn't know what special person I had, and that would be you. And how much you've brought out in me, and how many other lives that you and this group have touched at this event."
Yeah.
Because he was the photographer. So he was going around taking all the photos too, and uploading them. And it was so many people that he became friends with, and I did too, that would send us messages thereafter that was thankful. So to me, that was the biggest joy and gratitude at the end of the day, that we touched lives, we moved people, we made them feel valued and appreciated, and that they meant something to someone and to themselves. There were some that even talked about they were in suicidal states
Mm-hmm.
because they couldn't imagine themselves being out in the city. And so they were struggling with that. So it brought that more to life and as a resource and people that they could look up to and say, one day I could be like that, and I can start now. And that was the biggest joy for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that because you guys started this, you've definitely saved lives. MJ, what about you?
I agree 100% with Brandon. It was all the people going, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening in Salisbury. Thank you. There was one person in our community that said, why do you have to have a gay pride festival? And at the end of the day, he said, I see why. Thank you. I mean, and then just other people standing there looking at all the people on the street going, I can't believe this is my city. I never thought I'd see this in Salisbury. So yeah, I agree with Brandon. It was just the response that we got and the thanks that we got. We didn't do it to be thanked. We just did it because, it was time for Salisbury to do it. But I don't think we realized the lives that we would impact in a positive way.
Yeah. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, going back to the crowd size again, I was just so overjoyed that we had a wonderful turnout. We did, and like MJ and Brandon expressed, just to see the joy and the camaraderie amongst the celebration goers, and it was just an incredible feeling.
Yeah,
Tamara?
I would agree, and I think for 10 years we've heard so many stories of kind of like you shared, Brandon, about people who got it. MJ, to your point of why do you need it? Oh, I get it. That's why. So many people who have come out to their families and brought them there. Like that was their motivation to come out, was to bring them to this festival so they could see that they're not going to be alone, that there's a huge support community, that it's not this big, weird secret of whatever people have envisioned. It's just another group of folks trying to get through day by day, a foot in front of the other one, no matter what kind of hardships we go through. And I know I video blanked for a minute. I went to try to find that first year's newspaper.
Oh,
I have a file of all these, and I could find every year but the first year. But I can tell you, Brandon, I don't remember the headline. It might have had something to do with some woman kissing a preacher, but
It did.
yeah.
It did.
But our second one, which if we were to get into all of that, our second one was harder to put on than our first one.
Yes.
We had more obstacles. You think once you get through your first one, it's going to be easy. That second one was a bear, and we were consistent and wanted to persist. But the headline that day for our event, I don't know if you can see it. It might be backwards.
Our day of expression.
Yeah. Our day of expression, and this was on June 24th of 2012. So this was number 2, and it says Pride Day goes on with a new venue, no proclamation, because we had run out of space. We realized, and we had to shift to the parking lot. So we had shifted logistically, but yeah, I wish I could have. I wish I could have found it. I didn't have enough time. I was trying to dig, and
I should have got it too, because I actually have it in my box. I'm gonna look for it on the next time we get together.
Yeah, I will find it too, and we can post a picture of it. But the second headline was Our Day of Expression, and that's great.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where I disappeared for a second because I was like, I bet I have that.
No, that's great. It's funny because earlier today I was actually looking through the Salisbury Post online edition, trying to find the headline from that first year, and I found every year except 2011.
I did too.
When I searched, I found every single year, and I was a little bit like, what is the deal? But I did find one that was a few days later, it wouldn't have been the day after article, but it was a few days later, and it did talk about the woman who was charged for kissing a protester. So,
Yes.
and that was the only kind of disturbance that there was, which to me is pretty amazing to have 2,000 people show up and that many protesters. You got that many people on each side, and the worst thing that happens is a senior citizen tries to kiss a protester, and on the cheek. So I think that was a kind of a big thing. But but anyway, so anybody else have a big joy they want to share? Anything that was all right? I think we got through all that. I don't know. I got a little sidetracked there. But is there anything that any of you would do differently if you had it to do over again? Go back to that first year. Would you do anything differently? No, nobody.
I just want to say, I want to go back to how I said everything happens for a reason at the right time. Because I think, and sometimes we got to let it play out and then like rewind it and look at it. So, like MJ was saying, that first year we thought we were going to put it on in 2010. But if I had to look back, we weren't ready
Right.
for it to be in 2010. We didn't have all of the pieces. We didn't have the playbook completed. Yeah, there's going to be some things. And then Tamara brought up that the second year was a little bit more challenging than the first year. There's always going to be some obstacles that we have. So I think if I were to do anything differently, it would be to go right back again and trust your instincts. And the team that we had back then, we did. And so the different piece would be just to step back and pause and really focus on what is the goal, and then work more closely towards that. And we did. So to me, back the different thing is trusting who you are and who you're with, and that everything's going to be okay.
Mike, what were your future plans? I mean, did you have any thoughts past that first year, or was it just that first year?
Yeah, I don't really think I was thinking much past that first year. Just trying to pull this one off and let things happen going forward. Yeah.
What about everybody else? Did y'all have any thoughts about what would
I just
happen?
wanted to get that first year done, see how it went. I mean, no, I didn't think about year 2 yet. We just wanted to see what was going to happen that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in that moment in time, we knew if we can, pull this off. I think that's how we called it. If we can pull this off, then we've made a difference.
Yes.
But I don't think any of us, we knew we were going to pull it off. But I don't know if I don't know if any of us, and I know specifically speaking for myself, I had no idea the entire community impact that Salisbury Pride would bring to the city. I mean, Salisbury Pride is an organization, and I'm not talking about board members. I'm talking about Salisbury Pride as a group of folks. We volunteer with other organizations. When it's time to uplift other communities, we're the first ones at the charge of that. We band other people together. I think we weave a thread through our entire community, and people do it selflessly. And I think that's one thing that I've learned the definition of what pride means because of Salisbury Pride. And it was, that the old cliche, more water raises all boats and all that stuff. I really think if you work that approach, and we were always peaceful and not silent, though. There's a big difference. You can get along, but not go along. Does that make sense? And I don't think we ever, we made sure we were strategic in the path that we were taking to see the the forest for the trees. We weren't like dug in on a particular issue, and we saw the bigger picture. And I think we saw that from before we ever had the event. And it goes back to, there were so many people involved that first year before we had the event. So many different perspectives. I think that's what has made Salisbury Pride so strong, for these different perspectives across our entire community, from educators to retailers to business owners to healthcare professions to the fire department, the police department. I mean, and we were wired with our full community. All of us were. It's not just a few of us. All of us were. And that is what's, for me, that's the thing that I didn't count.
I want to say too, it extended beyond Salisbury too. We didn't realize how much of an impact we had made throughout the state. Having gone off to other Pride events and getting the word out there. So once we had that first one, we realized, okay, 2,000 people. So next year's probably going to be 5,000. So we got to work out that we got to get more vendors, and we got to strategically get out there. And so we did, and we went to the state Pride and all the different events. And everybody's like, oh, you were that group that thought only 350 was going to show up in 2,000. How did y'all do that? So it was like we were, they thought we had the master playbook on how to make that happen for some of those smaller towns that were smaller than Salisbury that wanted to start a Pride, and some that were bigger that didn't have the same type of relationship like Tamara was talking about with all the businesses. So how do they partner and how do they be there? So we became those advisors and those allies, and we became very much a part of their fabric, which then brought us all together in a bigger way than we ever realized, because then they were supporting us. We had people from all over the state that was ready to come to the Salisbury Pride. They would come there if they didn't go to the Charlotte Pride.
Oh, yeah.
So it was huge. It was more than we could imagine.
Yeah. So there's one comment that I want to read real quickly from a viewer who I'm pretty sure it's Catherine. She's also one of our newer board members, and she helps moderate the Facebook page. So it's under the name of Salisbury Pride, but she says, after going to Charlotte Pride for so many years, after moving to Salisbury in 2001, I was so happy when Salisbury Pride started. I've been to every one. I agree with those who said that Salisbury Pride is definitely needed. Rowan County is better because of it. I think she's absolutely right. I just want to read it because she really kind of summed it up there really well. But
That's good.
yeah, all right. So kind of one last question to all of you. How do you? Oh, it was actually Michael Brooks. I'm sorry. It was. He's also a newer board member and helps moderate the Facebook page. I was taking a shot in the dark there, but so anyway, kind of one last question, and anything else that you guys want to throw in there, but it's kind of two in one. How do you feel knowing that what you've started has helped so many people, and how do you feel about the 10th anniversary of Salisbury Pride? What's that make you feel? Let's see. MJ, you want to get us started?
So how do I feel about the 10th anniversary? Well, I'm very sad we didn't get to have a big party and just do it up really big this year. But we did the right thing, as did all the other prides, and we're just going to postpone the big celebration until next year. But I'm very proud that we've made it to 10 years. I mean, this was our 10th year. We've done some stuff, on a smaller scale, but we made it to 10 years. And after year 2, we spent a bunch of money in year 2. Well, yeah, we were in the hole leaving year 2. So I was like, well, if we make it to year 3, it's going to be a miracle. So knowing that we made it to year 10 and we pulled through and we just kept working at it, I'm very proud of that. So, and looking forward to next year's big celebration.
Yeah. So, Mike, what about you?
Well, while I was involved in that first year, uh, I kind of stepped back, and of course, Pride Incorporated took over the second year, and they've been doing a wonderful job since then. But I've always supported Pride, and I've always been there every year. It's given us a wonderful platform to award our annual scholarships, um, and it's just a beautiful gathering of people of all minds, and I'm just so proud to have been a part of it and continuing to be a part of it.
Thanks, Mike. Brandon, you want to?
I tell you, it's hard to believe that it's been 10 years. So that's the first thing. The second, for me, uh, people come in and out of our lives at the right time. We all came together at the right time. And despite what may happen with life changing events and life itself, the one thing that I can always count on is this family. So though we may not be seeing each other every day or in contact every day, but they're in my heart. And so to me, that has been the most gratifying piece because I will always be very much a part of where we started and the growth. And my commitment, as I said, things evolve, but at the end of the day, all you have at the end is your family and friends. And so you have to take the time because there's going to always be something, and you're going to say, I wish I could have and I should have. And so it's really the time to do the things when you can do it. And so my commitment when we're able to get together, I certainly will be there because I can't wait to really give everybody the big hug. But just know that I love each and every one of you and everyone that's listening because that's the inspiration for me. That's the energy that I get up. And I was just telling a friend of mine at work, I said, there's a piece of me that's missing. And the piece is the purpose that I've always had was to do this type of work. So having been absent from this type of work, and this type of work I'm talking about is this advocacy work. It is being there for others. You can have the one-on-ones, but sometimes you got to be it in um, the organization or the group. So I realize this has been a piece of my calling that's been missing, and so I've been really heavily praying on how to get back into this work. So I'm glad I was able to be on this initial um, commemorative piece of Salisbury Pride, and I look forward to being with you very soon.
Yes, definitely very soon. Tamara?
We love you, Brandon.
I love
Yes.
you.
Yes. I guess, I guess the question was about the 10-year anniversary and how you felt. And I guess I would have to look at it reflectively as well. Yeah, you're right, MJ. It sucked that we couldn't hold our 10-year one this year, but we're still going to have our 10-year one, right?
Yes.
We just
Absolutely.
postponed, wasn't canceled.
Yep.
We're still going to have 10. So it's important everybody knows that. I would just think reflectively, that first year up till now, I don't think we can ever thank all the faith leaders who have helped bridge that gap between the LGBTQIA community and our allies and their families. Our faith leaders have continued to grow and become part of this Salisbury Pride family, which kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that type of support. All the entertainers and Jamie, you might have said it at the beginning was, it was more than that first year. They performed for free.
For a long time. Yeah.
Long
Yeah.
time.
And they still don't make much.
Yeah, right. And we really appreciate all of our entertainers that we have had, we do have, and we will have, because we have been lucky to have a great committee to make this festival a destination, and our entertainers are such a part of that. From performers, impersonators, musicians, singers. We've had poetry, we've had comedy. We've had it all. And our speakers, the people that we've had speaking over the years, when we've had certain speakers, they've been poignant about what was happening here at home, but in our country. We've put a flag in the sand on a lot of issues, lest we forget the bathroom bill and the assault on our trans brothers and sisters. We were there. Us supporting when we were attacked at Pulse in Orlando. I mean, we have had poignant speakers who spoke to that. People who were here, the founding families of this city. We've had those folks speaking in our things and recognized for Allies of the Year and Volunteers of the Year, and we could never ever, Mike Clawson, thank PFLAG enough for saying, hey, we're going to make this happen because we are already an organized group, and the opportunity to partner with PFLAG after that for this entire time until hopefully as far as we can all see forward. The work that PFLAG does made Pride possible, and you all getting a chance to publicly reward in the community scholarships, and for Pride to be a part of that is just huge. And I'll get emotional.
It's okay.
But Scotty, to honor him every year is just special. And so I hope that I have the confidence that Pride will be around forever. Yeah. We've got great people on the board. As people come and go off the board, it continues to get better. We continue to ensure we've got that perspective and pulse on the community. And it's just a huge family that doesn't stop growing, and I can't feed them. Everybody can't come over for dinner anymore. It's just too many.
Oh, I miss those days.
Yeah. So, all right. So, does anybody have anything else they want to say to wrap it up? All right. So, here is what I would like to say. Tamara got me all choked up.
Sorry.
That's okay. So, first of all, I would like to thank y'all for taking time out of your evening to talk with us for a little while and share, this story. I think there's a lot who never knew kind of what went into it in the beginning and how you guys came together, and now they know. But also from a personal point of view, this is where I'm going to get choked up. Anyway, I feel like coming into this group, you guys gave me a purpose, and I think you've done that with a lot of people. And if y'all hadn't started this, we wouldn't be where we are today. And Salisbury and Rowan County wouldn't be where it is. And Brandon, like you said, how people found out about this little pride in Salisbury that was not so little. It has been kind of crazy seeing how many larger cities through the state and through the Southeast kind of have heard about us before we got there. And you guys did that, and I would like to thank you for doing that and for getting all this started and continuing on with it every year. So hopefully everybody watching has enjoyed our first panel discussion, and we are hoping to have more. So if anybody out there has ideas of things you'd like to hear or people you would like to hear from, then please let us know. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. or the contact form on our website. And also, if you'd like to get involved with Salisbury Pride, we always need volunteers. We always need committee members. We're always looking for board members and anybody else who just wants to help out. So same thing, hit us up on social media or our website. And thanks again, everybody. We really appreciate you all doing this and for starting Salisbury Pride. Have a good night, everybody.
Love you all.
Thank you, Heather,
Good
for doing
night.
a great
Love
job.
you.
Happy
Love
Pride.
you.
Happy Pride.